So lots of good success with a lot of companies in our immediate area. We happen to be in the middle of all that, but we can stand on our own work. But it's really nice to have all that great work being done in around us and the success those companies have had. But I think if one wants to see, you can see, we're next on the list. I mean, we've just done a really good job. Been very lucky with that drill bit. So yeah, it's exciting.
Hi, good afternoon. We got Brad Rourke, President, Director, and CEO of Scottie Resources. How's it going?
Yeah, well, Steve, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, love to see if you can start off by telling us about your flagship project, the jurisdiction, and what you have going on.
Sure. So I'm operating a junior exploration company situated in Northwest British Columbia in Canada, in an area known as the Golden Triangle, very well-known area. And I took this company over as an investor about 10 years ago. I can say this is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but we're rolling into our 10th season right now. We done 6 drill campaigns, albeit smaller campaigns. Perhaps some other companies one would love to measure me against, but we've been very proud of what we've done. And I think what we see with the momentum that we're having here is we've never been disappointed with the drilling and lots of different news than what you would see from an exploration company coming in the future. So what we're doing right now is we're transitioning from an exploration company into a development company. And so we're excited about that. And yeah, really proud and excited to tell people our story.
So, if you can tell us a bit about the British Columbia's Golden Triangle a little bit for people who don't know, or who else is there, and why should investors be excited about the area?
Sure. So, very interesting area. I would call it top 3 in the world, but there's some other smart guys would argue maybe not top 3, but top 5. But it's certainly we're in one of the most important jurisdictions on the planet Earth. And the reason I say that is just north of me is KSM, the Seabridge deposit. Now, a lot of the Americans know that one. That's the world's largest gold deposit. That's just north of me. The largest gold company on the planet Earth is called Newmont. We share a very large border with the Newmont lands in the Golden Triangle, more specifically right close to that Bruce Jack mine. And then you see a lot of success stories up there with Galore Creek. Gina, as of late, has come out with some really great news, and they're the next on the list for, developer going into production. The Premier Mill I share a large border to the south of my property. I'm Bruce Jack's north, and the Premier is south. And we have one of the largest land packages in this area, very important area. So lots of good success with a lot of companies in our immediate area. We happen to be in the middle of all that, but we can stand on our own work. But it's really nice to have all that great work being done in around us and the success those companies have had. But I think if one wants to see, you can see, we're next on the list. I mean, we've just done a really good job. Been very lucky with that drill bit. So yeah, it's exciting. And with the gold price this high, the market's not there. It's befuddling to everybody. But we're in no duress. We're pretty strong as a company right now, so we can weather whatever challenges that there are at the moment. So we feel blessed for that.
Can you tell us what you're finding at the grade? Can you tell us about the infrastructure, access to roads, power, water?
Sure. So I'll talk about grades in a second, and then I'll talk about infrastructure first. We are blessed as far as infrastructure. Now, the Golden Triangle is kind of way out there. We're in the northwest corner of British Columbia, but I actually drive through Alaska to get back into Canada, technically. So infrastructure for a lot of the companies up there make it challenging. And what that challenge ultimately ends up is being it costs a lot more to drill holes, right? Because of ease of access and stuff. Now with Scottie, we are a past producing mine There is the Bruce Jack power line. It was a $50 million power line. It goes right along my border. It's just, 1,900 meters away, right from the first portal to Scottie. Because it's a past producing mine, we actually have a permit that sits in care and maintenance. Other things with infrastructure, there's 7 kilometers of underground workings, a very competent rock, meaning not a lot of danger and such. Just a very, competent andesite. So you can still push the locomotives up and down the tracks. Everything's still in place. The town of Stewart is just 40 kilometers, 20 miles. I'll just make it easy. I'm not being exact here. Just down the road, which allows me to support my drill campaigns. And if you see our drill costs are the cheapest in the area. We're very good operators, but also we're kind of blessed with infrastructure. So there's absolutely nothing that we desire from an infrastructure point of view. And in fact, will you see with a lot of our marketing as of the last few months, and surely you're going to see a lot more, a lot of the business case that we're laying forward here is I'm only that 20 miles, 40 kilometers from a deep water shipping facility that's a direct route to China. In fact, I'm the second closest mine on the planet Earth, close to an underutilized deep water shipping facility. And as we cutting out numbers and stuff on these scenarios, it's very attractive. Just to put, I'm not comparing, I'm throwing mud at all, but if you look at the Bruce Jack and the Skeena, they're utilizing that port, but their trips are 300 kilometers one way, where I'm just 40 kilometers downhill on a mining road. I don't even have to go on a highway. So the advantage of that when we come to the next stage and putting economics around the rocks that we have, which is what you're seeing in 2025. So by the time I get to the Atlanta conference, I'll have an MRE out. I was hoping I'd have my maiden resource out before PDAC, but I'm very confident I'll have it out before I come to Atlanta next week. I'm just going through the exchange approving us getting that out. So that'll be a good piece of news. And then more importantly, it's not going to be some eye-popping mineral resource. The reason we chose to do that is because then I can go and come up with a PEA in 2025 based on the direct shipping ore model, which means shipping that ore off to the underutilized. There's so much capacity in Asia right now with the copper smelter business that when you look at the numbers, they're very compelling. That Scotty, very viable that we might ship those rocks across to China, but then also there's 2 mines on either side of us that also might like that ore. So, and we've got lots of optionality. And, and then the first part of the question I'll answer second is the grades. So again, without that MRE coming, it'll be in tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but it'll be in this week, I think sometime. You'll get to see the grades and they're impressive. We're very happy. There's 3 different grades because we have underground at Blueberry, and we have a bulk tonnage open pit scenario at the top of Blueberry. Of course, that's not going to be eye-popping grades, but I think people will be very happy with the underground at Scottie and the underground at Blueberry. They're going to be exceptional for what the world is offering at this moment. Yeah.
Can you share a little bit more about yourself? I'm excited to meet you at the Atlanta conference, but if you can share with the listeners a bit about your experience as well as the team you have around you.
Sure. Well, I've built a really good team around me that's way more interesting than myself, but I'm a businessman, and this is the first time I've ran a junior exploration company, although I cut my teeth in junior exploration in the late 80s, early 90s, and I was a service guy, building camps, claim staking, making sure geologists didn't kill themselves, and I did a lot of work for Murray Pesam, one of the legends of this industry. I actually physically staked the Comess mines. My names are on the tags. I ran the Avalanche program at that, but this is 35 years ago. And then so when mining came to a halt in 1997, I went back to where I was born from northern BC. I was in the area, the Smithers area of where this asset is, and that's how I got familiar with it. I went back to Calgary in 98, and I ran an online grocery store for a couple of years until the .com bust. And from there, then I went into financial sales and started what would be known today as an EMD in Calgary in my 30s. And I'd love to tell you how smart I was. I really thought I was back then because everything worked. I was in the right place at the right time. Got on the front end of some very legendary stories. I mean, the biggest one that kind of, I don't even like saying it anymore because it's so old. I don't want to rest on those laurels. But I mean, I basically put the money and the ideas together for a company called Athabasca Oil Sands, and it ended up being the second largest IPO in the history of Canada, even till to this date. So that kind of really changed the trajectory of my family. And I retired in 2006, moved back to the North to raise my kids. And then I kind of was just coaching sports and just, volunteering time. And was an accident, me helping out a couple prospectors, took it over out of frustration, never thinking that I never worked 10 years on anything in my life, but here I am. It's been quite a challenge, but I've learned a lot, and it's certainly going to make me a better investor. But mostly I've been managing my own family money for the last 20 years now, Steve. Yeah.
You've got quite a team around you as well. Can you tell us more about their expertise, their experience, and their track record of success?
Sure. So, at least I'm not very smart, but I was smart enough to know that I didn't know how to run one of these things. So it started with my board. And what I'm really proud about with the board at Scottie is nobody knew each other amongst those board members before the formation of that board, which gives me true independence, right? And the different skill sets. So you got Ellie Owens, very well known now, but when we put her on the board, I think now everybody knows her. She's living out of New York or New Jersey and works with RMAT, but she was running a little junior exploration company. She's got a geology degree and a legal degree. So she fit right in there. John Williamson is on my board, is simply a legend in junior exploration and has always stayed at that junior exploration level. And the stories you would know from John are very, very recognizable. As of late, the latest stories would be the Founders Gold story, which is a great story. That's John started. The benchmark called Thesis now that he started. Kaminak, Committee Bay, Altiplano. So John's really, really experienced in this junior exploration side of it. And then Ernie Mast is on my board, which is more of a C-suite guy. He was the COO of New Gold at one time, built the Cobre Panama mine. And so, I've got that big company experience. I've got the knife fighter in junior exploration. Ellie, who might be young, but she's a lawyer with a geology degree. And then the last board member is a gentleman named Steve Stein, who's a accredited board member, which not a lot of junior explorations have accredited board members on. And he basically was the founder of a company called Black Diamond Camps, went from a napkin to a $2 billion company. So he knows the service side of things. So I've got a really good board. And what I'll tell you right here is they run me. I do not run my board. So that's great. And then from the day-to-day workings, we have Thomas Mumford. Dr. Thomas Mumford has been with me for 8 years now with this story. So all the geology is his fault. And so he's done a heck of a job and built a really good team around him. Now, this would be his first corporate job. Before that, he was the program head for BCIT, British Columbia Institute of Technology. He was graduating the geologist and mine engineer for that program for about 6-7 years. I stole him out of there, mostly because I wanted a real smart young guy who understood modeling, because these days, different from when I was involved in the 80s, and you get an old prospector, he licks a rock and he's all happy. Now it's just data. They're all data scientists. And so I recognize that about Thomas, and then his network, because he's been graduating geologists and mine engineers would be better than most. Because as you know, in this industry, I'm a young guy and I'm 59 years old, right? And I'm like one of the youngest. And so, to get that 40-year-old, that millennial crowd. And so I built a really good team that way. You will see another big name coming on officially to the company. And that would, I can't say his name because we haven't released that. But by the time I get to Atlanta, that too will be released. And he's going to come on as our COO. And what he's done in the past is he's ran about 3 very prominent mines in British Columbia. So we're excited to get that out. He's actually, starting to participate in our meetings now. And it took a little bit, but really exciting when you get a caliber of that to kind of come down to where we are. And then my first line center is, better than all of us is Kevin Jennings. Now, Kevin Jennings is a special advisor to the company, but he's probably in front of his computer working on something for Scottie. He doesn't have like 100 stories that are going on. Owns about 11% of the company, but he's doing all the financial modeling. And if you look at his resume, it's just shocking. I mean, his last official job was CFO, Barrick Africa, but he was a principal at Xstrata and Falconbridge. This guy has been directly responsible for restructuring mines. And we're talking like 50 mines in his career. So his level of knowledge is just far outweighs what Thomas and I, and even with our COO coming on, just Kevin's just what he's done in the past and at that big level, and understands just things I would never understand. So we're really blessed, and the fact that he's owns 11% of the company and keeps buying more is should be a testament to everybody. Again, he doesn't have 100 stories that he's not out there milking it. He retired about 7 years ago. He's a year or two younger than I am, but we're really blessed. He's my first line center from a hockey analogy. That he's just kind of keeps us all engaged, and again, his numbers, his spreadsheets are just dead tight. Like, he's been kind of giving us projections for the last 2 years, and it's quite amazing what he can tell us about our company, but more importantly, what he tells us about every other company. So we're really blessed. We're really good. We're blessed with a great team. I'm the only unknown.
Well, after this interview, it's going to change, right, Brad?
Wow, we keep thinking that, but
you mentioned the ownership a little bit. Let's get into that. If you can share about the share capital and corporate structure, how many shares do you have outstanding, fully diluted? How many warrants? And who owns the company? Can you
Sure.
Percentage of insiders, institutions, and any major shareholders you can share?
Sure. So I've done probably a poor job of marketing to the retail crowd, but what I had done, because I didn't start this company, this was an existing company for 8 years before I took it over. I thought I knew how important structure was, but then when you start coming in and try and clean up something, I always looked at it from an investor point of view. Just okay, yeah, what's the fully diluted? How many shares outstanding? What's their raise schedule? What can I expect for dilution? Blah blah blah, like an investor should. What I did, it was 100% retail when I took this over, and mostly, Vancouver Stock Exchange type, the program. Let's just call it that to be polite. So, but what I've done is taken it from 100% retail to about 30% retail, and I would go 70% are all high net worth. So I myself, I own about 5% of the company, of which I paid for my shares. I self-funded it for the first 3 years. I owned 20. I was at 19.9 in 2019 and lending the company money because I didn't want to breach that 20% because it's just a big pain in the butt. So anyways, I still own about 5%. You've got Kevin Jennings at around 11%. Ross Beatty owns 5% of the company. That's pretty impressive because Ross really doesn't come this far down the chain for junior exploration. He's kind of done that side of his life. He can just wiggle his nose with a development company and it'll just work. So we feel really good there. 20% of my company's owned out of Switzerland. So a lot of really prominent names. Now, I'm not allowed to say one. They're very, very private. In fact, they won't even come into the conferences when I go to Switzerland a couple times a year, just because he doesn't want to be seen. But who I can say out of that group would be Eric Mayer from Conway. So you might, if anyone knows the business, they might get an understanding who else might be there, because Eric, it's a pretty little tight group. But I mean, there's still out of Switzerland, about 20% of the company's owned. Oh, Zechner owns a good position. Phoenix Gold Fund owns a good position. I believe Eric Sprott, still haven't spoken to Eric in a while, but I still see my name on the list. People publish them. Yeah. So a really impressive set of investors. And again, haven't really put too much time and effort into the retail crowd, but I think 30% is the right percentage. And then that's one of the reasons I'm coming to a conference in May, which is not a typical thing to do, but, and focusing on that US investor. One of the things I did about 6 months ago is I did roll the stock back. So we're just under 50 million shares outstanding today. We're 90. I'm just going to talk in Canadian dollars. Call it $1, but it's not. It's like 90 cents. But oh my gosh, if you can't see the value in $1, I can't help you from an investment point of view. Anyways, like I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But fully diluted about 55 million. So it looks like a clean sheet of paper for a company that's been trading for probably almost 20 years now. And the fully diluted is very low warrants. I've been pretty cheap on warrants. I hate them. And I think now that if we go into developer, no use giving warrants out because that might make sense for a greenfield project. But I mean, when you've mitigated the risk that we have, and again, we're going to be able to show, I'm going to come up with a NAV this year. And if you look at developers across the board, they trade 0.7 NAV, and that's the good and the bad all put together. I'd argue that we're going to be way in the good for a whole host of reasons. But those are things you'll get to see in the very near future. Exciting news.
Well, Brad, I hear a lot about mitigating risk, and I think about potential. I mean, what kind of risk and potential are we looking at here? Risk reward, if you can tell us about the upside we can get excited about, and tell us about the risk that you're mitigating for us and what they
Sure.
do.
So we'll talk potential first. And so all my videos I've ever done, they're all on our webpage. So you can go look at what I was saying in 2019. And, we sure have come a long way. And back then I was like, I just want to show a pathway to 1 million ounces. That was my goal. Excuse me, to show a pathway to 1 million ounces. Here I am today. I'm targeting 2 million ounces. I feel very comfortable saying that. Again, we're way under drilled. People have to realize how little meters we've done compared to the companies that people want to compare me to, right? And I'm not going to single out names, but whenever I get into these conversations with the bankers and the analysts, comparing me to companies that have got 500,000 meters drilled. And so it's flattering. And my job is to educate people. I'm like, in total, I've only drilled 70,000 meters, but that MRE that's coming out is only going to constitute 55,000 meters. And it's going to be impressive. Now, it's not going to be mind-boggling, but when you look at my finding costs, and we're open, like everything's on surface, everything's shallow. So when you're mitigating risks, what's profit, everything's paid for. We don't owe a dime to anybody. The financial end we've got, we've been pretty good at it. And I don't see any reason why people should think that we can't carry on, even if it's frustrating times like this. So, you're easy to judge me compared to other junior exploration companies, and not all of them, because there's a lot of great stories out there. But, because those videos are there, if somebody wants to do that 2-3 hours of due diligence, of which you should, if you're going to invest in this crazy industry, you can easily judge, did we do what we say we're going to do year after year after year? And again, I'm so proud of that, but it's just, people don't do due diligence as far as I think I didn't tell. But that being said, I do a lot of due diligence, and I have, I don't make my living off Scottie. I have a portfolio. I get it wrong anyways, thinking that I'm smart with all the due diligence I do. So it's quite a mystery, but I think, with gold being, what's the biggest risk? The price of the commodity. Now, equities have not followed lockstep with the commodity price, but nobody had 32.50 on their bingo card for the midway through 2025. People are asking me prediction. I can never predict the price of oil or gold, and my energy portfolio is still bigger than my mining portfolio. But I always thought I was being bold, and I just kind of went. I thought at the end of the year we'd see 3250 to 3300, and the only reason I came up with that number is I go 24% gain in the commodity price, just like we had in 2024. So that was my reasoning. Some big, wired in, spreadsheet. But I was going, okay, nobody believed that for 2024. All I look at is the central bank buying and the money printing, and I go, okay, gold's just going to go up for the simple fact that everything's going up. I believe inflation's coming. I do believe they'll revalue gold. Now, this is my own speculation, but if you look at the central banks around the world, the Basel III, and not to get too technical, but you're going, it makes total sense to me that eventually it'll be smart for everybody as they try and figure out how to get along, is how do we value each other, and gold could be, excuse me, part of that equation. I don't think we're going back to a gold standard, but I do believe gold is going to play a role in whatever theory or some new system that some smart kid's going to come up with. But I do believe gold's going to be part of that conversation. And so I'm happy to own it. And I own a physical gold. And then, I own, own a portfolio of exploration and majors. So,
Brad, can you tell us, last question for you really is, if you can tell us about any upcoming plans you can share about what you guys got going on in the next quarter and the rest of the year. And then really briefly, if you can tell us about the capital and what you plan to do with that.
Okay. So as of today, at this very moment, I've got 6.7 million hard dollars in the bank, which is important. Hard dollars in Canadian, you got to always just differentiate if you have flow through dollars or hard dollars. I have a complete hard dollar account, and that would be because, and I didn't mention this in the last question, also in equity. I'm the only company in the history that I know of Franco-Nevada to own equity in a junior, that as they bought equity in me. And I'm the only company that they ever got a royalty from without a resource. So that's another big, that happened last year. But for Franco-Nevada to come down this far down the chain, that gives me technical validation. And that's why we took that money. And I'm still have just under 7 million of that money that I took from Franco 14 or 15 months ago. The program that you're going to see, again, they're all hard questions to answer because I haven't released that to the market. But I can tell you we're going to do the biggest program we've ever done this year. And because we just had a board meeting last week. And so we'll get that out to the market. Last season, I ratcheted back because the market was so bad. So I only did 10,000 meters, which was still perhaps more than most companies that you would be comparing me with. But the 2 years before that were 20,000 seasons, 20,000 meter seasons. So kind of already let the cat out of the bag. I see something more than 20,000 meters this year. But because that MRE and the PEA, a lot of that, we're going to take that MRE and make into indicated and a lot of exploration. We're open everywhere. And so you'll see a big program. Like I say, I'm just under 7 million hard dollars in our treasury at the moment. We don't owe a dime to anybody on any properties. They're all no earn-ins. It's all, we own them all. 55,500 hectares in land total and 7 past producing mines. And we're just working at the Scottie. So lots of exploration potential that we're just going to focus on what's going to pay us out and get that NAV. And today we're a $40 million market cap Canadian with, $6.5 million in the bank. So you're an enterprise value of 33 million Canadian. Well, then, oh my God, I own the biggest building. We own the equipment. We own, it's a screaming deal right now, especially for Americans. Because it's just, we have monopoly money up here and you guys have the reserve currency. So, and our dollar is going to go down.
Not that one, Brad. That feels like a trip.
Yeah, well, you should come up, have a look. Like we have one of the most beautiful site tours you'll ever be on, Steve, and it's easy. An hour and a half flight up from Vancouver, and then can drive you, be right at Scottie Gold within 3 hours from the Terrace Airport.
Well, I'll tell you, in comparison to gold, the reserve currency feels like monopoly money too.
Well, you're the dirtiest shirt in the closet. There's no question. But this is why gold, and you see, there's some guys that I really like to follow. Makes sense how eventually, you look at your total $100 billion in debt in $100 trillion in debt off balance and balance sheet in the U.S. If you reprice the gold that you have, if you have the 8,137 tons or whatever that number is to today's level, you could pay off pretty much, from what I've read, a lot of that foreign debt, and then you'd only have debt amongst yourselves of which you can manage. It makes sense to me, right? That's something along the lines the gold's price in the US at $44 an ounce right now. Uh, I mean, I think your president wants to lower interest rates. That's what it sure seems like to me. And what does that mean? That means, well, problem is it doesn't mean anything because there is no book at Harvard Library that tells you for these unprecedented times, because you got treasuries going up and interest rates going down and gold, nothing's really working the way that I thought I knew it would if you asked me 5 years ago. So it is interesting, but the simple fact that they're going to print money everywhere, gold's going to go up just like everything's going to go up. Yeah.
Well, Brad, enjoyed the conversation. Enjoyed getting to know you a little bit more here, and looking forward to the Atlanta trip. If you can tell us, lastly, if you can tell us about your ticker, where you traded, and how do people get in touch with you if they have any further questions?
Sure. So we trade on the Toronto Stock Exchange as the venture under the symbol SCOT, Scott. And we trade on the QB board, the OTCQB in the US. And I'm actually qualified for a QX now. So we're kind of working our way through that, but it's SCTSF. And we have a Frankfurt listing, but I don't even ever check to see what's going on there. It was just very affordable to do that listing. And I'm sorry, was there part of the question I missed?
No. How do people get a hold of you? If you ever want to share your website or email or.
Sure. ScottyResources.com. Go on the website. My phone number is published there, or Gordon, my biz dev guy. Yeah, go through that. And any questions, my phone number's on there, man. You can call me anytime.
Well, Brad, thanks for your time, even when you're sick. Enjoyed it, and I'm excited.
Sorry about the coughing and the sneezing, but just can't get over it. I feel good. I can't write a call in sick, but I feel good, but I'm just coughing and sneezing all the time.
Well, Brad, enjoy the time. We'll get better soon.
I'll see you next week. Bye now.